Well, hi everyone. It is Tracy Chamberlain Higginbotham here at Women Ties with another wonderful Woman of the Week interview. And I have to tell you, this person that's joining me is someone who's been very special in my life and through almost all of my business life. We met a long time ago here in Syracuse when she was running her businesses and I was running mine. And she has since retired. And what I thought would be a really interesting conversation today is, most women entrepreneurs, when we're starting our businesses, we're not thinking about retirement, or maybe we are, if we're smart, maybe financial planners. But, what's it like to kind of ramp up to retirement or ramp down your business? And what's it like to actually be retired? And what can you do good and maybe not so right about making that move? So welcome, my friend, Sue Beebe. A wonderful house up on the St. Lawrence River during the winter months. She's very smart, and it has a wonderful place down in South Carolina. And
yes.
So really glad that we got her off the river today to join us. So thank you. I think you'll all be really thrilled. So how's retirement going there, Sue Beebe?
I actually highly recommend it. It's everything that I had ever dreamed it would be, or wanted it to be, or planned it to be, and then some. But I also have learned and appreciate the fact that retirement isn't for everyone. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like having 4 children. It's not for everybody. So where I don't run around telling everyone they need to have 4 children, I don't run around telling everyone they need to retire, because it's something that I knew I wanted to do for a long time. So it wasn't something that I just woke up one day and said at 55, I'm going to throw in the towel. So it was a 10-year plan.
It was a 10-year plan, because it was going to be one of my questions. As smart business owners, of course, we're supposed to have our business plan and updating our plan.
Yes, you are.
Yes. I'm going to do that as soon as we're done. But, again, when you're starting, you're so enthusiastic about creating this great company and you have passion and you're not thinking.
And you're busy doing it. You're busy every day doing it.
Right. You're not thinking of the end plan. Mm-hmm. And so did you start in terms of business planning, like from the beginning, kind of knowing a time frame by which you wanted to retire? How did the planning?
Well, let me at least acknowledge the fact that I am a firm believer in business plans. And from the day I opened Lighthouse Marketing back in 2001, it started with a business plan. Even though I wasn't seeking financing, when I hear something and it makes sense to me, I implement it. So that's the same with the whole retirement and financial planning. If I hear something and it makes sense to me, I'm the type of person that's going to implement it. So my story, not everybody does, but I met my Prince Charming in 2005. And at that point, I had already experienced 2 divorces and had my 4 children. So when Jerry and I met, we just enjoyed each other's company so much. And so it was right out on this deck looking at the St. Lawrence River in 2008 when we got married, that I said to him, I just want to spend every day with you. I really don't want to work anymore. And he said, well, that's great, but we still have all these babies to raise, because they were really young. So we literally sat down with pen and paper and said, what needs to happen and what length of time will it take? And we looked at all our debt. We looked at how old the kids were. We looked at what savings and retirement we had. And it became obvious that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. So we literally put down, 2019 as the retirement year. And then we backtracked as to a list of all the things that had to happen. And then it became something that we spoke about, I wouldn't say every day, although it was a part of how we moved through life. It was how we made decisions on what to buy and how we made decisions on how to raise the kids, because we wanted them to have a fair amount of independence and a confidence about them, so that they weren't looking for us beyond a certain age. So ironically enough, when we got closer to it, I realized that my youngest was going to be graduating high school in 2018. So I had done the math wrong, and we ended up being able to retire earlier.
Wow.
She's not happy about that, but that was the honest to God truth.
Right.
So we both retired in 2018, the end of 2018. And so now we're into our full, third year of full on, both of us being fully retired and spending summers up here and winters down there.
Yeah, and I know that everything on Instagram and Facebook isn't always it appears it's a perfect image. And I know that it's not always that, but man, you look really happy having known you as long as I've known you.
I got to admit, it is mostly that. I mean, like when I had my sudden surgery when I was down south, had to have my gallbladder removed. I posted that picture of me because I thought, you know what? I have people that love me and I love them, and I believe in the power of prayer. And I'm like, I'll take all the prayers I can get.
Sure,
and so I do try to share the real. I don't think I go into as much detail as the painfulness of still raising young adult children.
Ever shifting.
Those who have them understand that, it's not easy.
Right. Well, I think something I've always appreciated about you too is the fact that you, as a working mother, have always been kind of independent and had your children be independent. I think the difference sometimes between you and I is I'm still trying to hold on to mine and say,
yes, I see that in you. And you have beautiful boys, and now they both have fiancés. Is that right? Or
one of them does. One of them's been with somebody for a long time, and I'm always like, can't you move to Syracuse? Can't you move back here? And then I think of women like you that are like, let them fly, let them go. And
you really have to encourage them. But I think that I'm in a place now where our oldest lives in Seattle. Oh, wow. And she's still single, but loving her life. She's 32. And our second oldest is Judy. She's in Maryland, married, and we became grandparents in December. So we have baby Theo, who's 6 months old, and she's doing fabulous and loving her life. And then my son, David, just graduated from Brockport, and, he's still figuring it out. He has struggled the most, I think, with our whole retirement plan.
Right.
And then there's our little Mary, who's a senior at Stony Brook and just, so independent and so happy with her life. And so, but they are all over the place.
Yeah. Well, as a child of divorce, I understand and have always appreciated that my heart wasn't with where being in the house I grew up with. It was always where my parents were. And so whether it was in Washington, D.C., or Annapolis or Maine or wherever, anytime they moved, even though I wish, that we could still be closer together if we were far apart. Anytime I went to visit them, that was home.
I love that. I think because you must have started young. I waited till they were older. And as with any change, as with the children, if you start young. So the divorce wasn't such a big deal for any of them. It was us selling the family home that they grew up in.
Well, change has all its level. And as you get older, you realize you have to change, and you and I as women entrepreneurs realize that, nothing stays the same in business either. So we gain the change wisdom as we are progressing along.
We do. And it's smart, I think, because life is going to throw you curveballs anyways. So you might as well just acknowledge that that's coming.
Right.
And, I still love the saying, this too shall pass. And, I think I'll have that on my gravestone and my children know it well. But because even in the good times, even when Jerry and I are out on the river or we're sitting at the ocean, and I'll constantly have that thought that this too shall pass, not thinking something horrible is going to happen, but that everything is cyclical and that I have to be prepared for whatever life is going to present, but we'll always have, these memories. That's partly why we decided to retire early. We literally said, if we could do this for 10 years and then, for whatever reason, run out of money, we're both willing to go to Walmart or wherever. We just want to do it together. He can work in tools somewhere and I'll be cute in my little apron up front.
You would be a great bartender or waitress, I must say.
I'm going to Walmart.
You could work in the,
put me at a register, but just meaning that we'll do what we have to do to
I
survive.
understand.
But, people tell us all the time, you're way too young to have retired, or your financial planners will say, your situation's very, very unique. And, the potential's there that you're going to run out of money. So I'm not taking it with me, and I'm not saving it for the children. So I might as well use it while I can still get on my Harley and, enjoy.
Yeah. We have parents of our oldest son's best friends since he was little. And they're 10 years older than us. They retired finally to Florida last year, or 2 years ago, maybe. And we met up with them and they said, with Scott and I being in our mid 50s right now, said, we should have done this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, because I think they're in their 70s. So they're like, don't wait long to do it. And then I think of my father-in-law, who worked at Carrier for 44 years and, died suddenly at the age of 64.
Yeah.
And you do think of that. And I understand and appreciate that not everybody financially can make the decision to retire.
Right.
But I hope what we can talk about next is really the wisdom for women entrepreneurs, starting to think about it, or maybe, looking at maybe a 20 or 30-year plan. What do you think that you did right?
Well, I think
right about the, making the decision and what you've learned from it.
I think there's some similarities to being an entrepreneur and a business owner and retirement, especially retirement early, because when you talk to a financial planner, they're going to say to you, on a scale of 0 to 10, what is your risk factor? What is your ability to tolerate risk?
Mm-hmm.
Well, being a business owner, and I think just I've been in sales my entire life on commission. So you don't do that if you don't have a high risk factor. Mm-hmm. So I was always like a 9-10. And when Jerry and I first started answering that, he was a 6-7. And I thought, okay, so I got to slow down a little bit or I'm going to scare the hell out of him. But for your members and people listening, I would say you really got to check in with yourself, because I think the reason why I was successful with Lighthouse Marketing, and even through the challenges and having to recreate myself, and I think it was 2011, 2012, and just reformulate everything, it was because I had a higher tolerance for risk. And so when it came time to make a retirement plan, being able to say we might run out of money and not breaking into a cold sweat is because of my high tolerance for risk.
Right.
And so I think it's benefited us because our money's in the stock market, which has been fabulous. And you know what? You have to have faith.
Yes.
Faith's a big part of my life.
Yes.
And so when I, can't rely on my own intelligence and what's happening in the news or whatever else, and I just rely on my faith. And, it's a ability to take risk, to be in the market in order to have your money grow. And I'll tell you another thing, early in my career of Lighthouse Marketing, I would go to my CPA at the end of the year and we'd look at my taxes, what I was going to owe. And he'd say, well, do you have a line of credit? And I say, yeah, I don't use it, but I have it. And he would say, go get $10,000, put it into a 401k that I set up for myself and my employees, and then spend the year paying that off. And the first time I heard that, it sounded like shenanigans, which I'm kind of above board and don't really play any games like that. And he's like, no, this is what you need to do. I will make sure that you're able to retire if you listen to me. So every year I would look at it and I would make sure my line of credit was available. I would put it on and it would reduce my taxes.
Right.
My retirement money started to go up and I was disciplined. I would pay it off.
Right.
So I say, look into that.
Yeah.
Talk to your CPA, make sure you have someone who knows what your goals are. And if not for that, I'm sure that I wouldn't have been so willing to retire. But Jerry and I both entered the relationship with about the same amount of assets and the same amount of debt.
Right.
And so it wasn't an unequal balance. And I felt proud to be able to have 4 kids and be able to walk into that, contributing to what our long-term plan was.
Right. Absolutely. No.
So get a 401k and invest.
That's good. All of our financial girl, and we have some through Women Ties if you need any help. And of course, we have female accountants as well.
I love that. And I highly, highly recommend it, because there's other stories that someday we'll share on how the treatment of being a woman with 4 kids
Yes.
client, and somebody else was different. And I had to call my CPA on it more than once.
Yeah, and you and I were speaking about back in our original days of when we met. And for me, I started my first business in 1995. And back then, running a local women's business group, a lot of the discussion were women that were still trying to get credit lines or loans and couldn't unless they had their husband's signature on it.
Absolutely.
And that was what, 30, almost 25 years ago.
Yeah, so by 2001, it was, I think, more open and more possible, but I still felt a lot of different little instances of discrimination, if you want to call it that, but just a different level of treatment. And I don't think it was all malicious. I think that people see a young woman who has 4 young children, and they're like, oh my God, you've got to protect everything and you've got to live from scarcity. And I was like, heck no, because they're going to grow up and leave me, and I need to have a plan.
Yes. A plan. I know my son, my youngest, I probably shouldn't. Well, my youngest son has very big monetary goals. And so I said to him the other day when he was sharing it with me, I'm like, now include your mother in part of that big house on the ocean that you want.
Absolutely.
Mom. And I'm like, well,
I think you have to put it out there. I keep telling my kids, the ones that are married with the baby, that they should think about a nice 1-bedroom condo on the ocean in Kiowa, and they've got a guaranteed tenant for 6 months out of the year, because we don't own there, we rent.
Yeah, they'll come our way at some point.
I think it's very smart. For them.
Right. Well, is there anything that you wish you did different or have learned? Is there a small piece of wisdom? It doesn't have to be,
I think the thing that caused me the most pain, we always learn our lessons in the painful periods, right? The thing that caused me the most pain with the plan that we put in place was that I don't know that I prepared all of my children well enough. So, speaking specifically, my son, like I said, is the one that struggled the most. And I think I was just shocked by it because my daughters were so focused and willing to leave the nest and knew what they wanted. And my poor son, I think was, a freshman in college when we sold the house, but we did get an apartment in town with a room. So it's not like we completely abandoned him. And then of course he can stay with us here and he can come there, but he really struggled. And now we've come full circle where he's been able to express the abandonment that he felt. And so that pains my heart. And we've had a lot of, ugly knockdown, drag out conversations and in person. And, I held my ground because I'm Taurus and stubborn as hell. And he wanted me to admit I'd done something wrong or that I regretted it. And I'm like, boy, I'm racking my brain. But I got to tell you, I think it was like perfect timing. The house sold, sight unseen, full price, everything that I would measure how success was to let me know whether I was doing the right thing or on the right path happened. But for him, it was a whole different. And so I have grown as a mom and have apologized to him for the pain that it caused him and have so much empathy for, the fact that it hit him harder. So I think he still has, he's only 22, so he has a long ways to go in figuring everything out. But I also believe we are parents, moms, but we're also individuals.
Yes.
And so when things start to get really ugly, I lean on my faith and my belief system. And I say, look, you picked me as your mother. Right. You need to go in the bathroom and look in the mirror and say, well, why the hell did I pick her? Because there's lessons there for you.
Yeah.
And they hate when I say it, but I believe it wholeheartedly. We pick the environment that we're going to go through and have agreed to certain experiences. And nobody picked me because I was going to be the doting, helicopter mom.
Right.
They didn't. Yeah. They missed that boat. If they
I hear you on that because I was raised so independent, raised the boys that way. It doesn't mean I wish that they were closer, but yeah. And I think too, just communication. I mean, I started my businesses when my kids were 3 years old and 3 months old.
Yeah.
So, they sort of knew all along kind of what was a priority and but equally was my business and equally I remember my son having a little bowl cut and I had a door, a glass door, and I shut the door because the phone had rang. And this was really before cell phones and everything. So it was a house phone. And he was a little bowl cut, and he's like looking at me, and I'm on the phone. And I'm like, don't knock on that door. And he's like ready to knock. I'm like, don't you knock.
That's what I love about all the Zoom calls now, when the reporters, when their kids are running in, or the people that are trying to, conduct interviews and work. And I'm like, hello, lived it, because my office was out of my house, and I had a pillow that I hung on the door, and God help anybody that touched the door when the pillow was up.
I know. Isn't that funny how much we had to adjust back then to really norms, opposed to like, and you and I probably broke, somebody said to me once, you're a pioneer in home-based businesses. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I just think that I was.
You definitely were at your time, because it was not popular when I did it. And as I went everywhere kicking and screaming, I was like, oh, there's no way I'm having a business out of my house. I mean, I'm trying to look legit here, people.
Right. I know. And back then too, there wasn't. So it's just an area where I think you and I can, share the light for women that are coming up, that are trying to do it, even though I think they have so many other, even with the pandemic, so much has changed in the sense of,
it's opened that up a lot.
Opened it up, which is wonderful, because we all have the flexibility.
Because it was smart. I could have never raised 4 kids and kept a successful business for 15 years if I couldn't control every expense there was around running that business. And I did. When it was good, it was good personally. When it was bad personally. And we all adjusted. And, even in meeting Jerry, things didn't dramatically become easy, because like I said, we went in equally. And, those were some of my worst years in business, when my Lighthouse Marketing things were starting to shift, and I couldn't keep that going where I thought it should. And it ended up just being the universe pushing me in a different direction into the coaching and that whole era of my career. But you had asked about, for your members, how to think about it. I had a plan, but I also knew that I couldn't just unplug everything. And it wasn't the type of business that I could really sell, because it was me.
Yes.
And so I started to do what I called semi-retirement. So 5 years out, I started to wind down my marketing and advertising clientele and business, and started to go solely into the coaching. And so I had, at the most 3 different, I'd call them mega coaches, who, did 99% of the work and had all the clients. And I would just step in and sort of do my specialty of sales and marketing, and how to tie that in spiritually and make it all make sense.
Right.
And, by the time it was the fall of 2018, I was down to 1 of those clients, and they knew, and I knew that it was coming to an end. So it was never painful for me. I mean, from the second I finished my last coaching call until this very moment, there's never been like a sense of regret, or I wish I could do that again. Because honestly, you can have a conversation and coach somebody, which I do when asked, anytime. And it was no longer about being compensated or earning money for it. It was about just sharing my wisdom or being of support. And so I wouldn't trade any of that for the world, but, make a plan. Can you sell your business? If you can't sell it, how you're going to wind it down? There was a lot more referrals going around, because if clients and people were reaching out to me and I was no longer doing it, I was shoving them off to all the different specialty people that I knew were growing. They were in growth mode.
Well, I think that's a really good point that you just mentioned too. A lot of women entrepreneurs are solo entrepreneurs, but we do have partners and other women in business that we know of well. So part of the business plan could be, well, who does something similar to what I do, where they could benefit, and maybe it is a conversation.
Absolutely.
Pass
off your clients. I did that. I'm not naming names, but they know who they are if they're still within your circle, because I'm sure it was my women ties people, because it was a small circle, and we all interrelated to each other and network together. But I would come clean with clients and say, listen, I'm transitioning. I'm bringing this person in now, so you can see them, meet them, decide, because it's ultimately your choice, but I'm recommending them. And so I hope that there was some longer term benefit. But it was nice to really cut it all instead of just constantly having that 1 or 2. I really think going into full retirement at that point, I would recommend, because, you know, when you're working, even if it's, you know, half time or half a day, you're in work mode.
Yeah.
You're prepping, you're finishing. So do what you need to do up until a certain point, and then cut it and share.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's perfect, because right, sometimes the hardest thing, it's like pulling off the Band-Aid. It's not, you know, it's that slow, oh my God, I don't want to feel the pain.
Well, it's always thinking that you need something. I think that's where it comes from, that fear again, you know, well, I need at least one client, or what if something goes wrong and I need an extra so many thousands of dollars a month or whatever. And I feel like when you really trust your plan and then implement it, the universe is going to rise up like it does in any other scenario to greet you. So, you know, who counted on stimulus money? I don't know. I mean, COVID's been horrible for so many people, and I hate to ever project it in a positive way, but, you know, the timing of it, for me to be able to be there for my family and friends in a way that I wouldn't have been able to if I was working full time, and to be supportive of colleagues who are still working. I just feel so blessed that I'm able to do the things that I really felt like I didn't have the time to do as often or as well as I wanted to.
Right. Well, I think you make a good point as we get to the end of our interview, is that COVID did give a perspective of what it was probably like for most business owners, to think about, wow, how do I ramp up, or I'm kind of have to ramp down to sustain myself, and what does this look like, and what does it feel like to me? And is this something I can replicate for retirement, or what would I do different?
And do I even want to do this anymore? I think a lot of people looked in the mirror and said, whether it was a job or an entrepreneurship or a full-on successful business, it really gave everyone the opportunity to be at a pace, to slow down, forced to slow down, and look in the mirror and say, I don't want this anymore. And I just encourage everybody to listen to that little voice, to know that it's real, and not to be scared, because everybody has the voice. People say to me, how'd you know what to do? And I'm like, by intuition. And they're like, well, I don't have it. Well, you have it. You just don't want to listen to it, because we all have it. But when you have that knowing of what to do, and you come up with the roadblocks and everything, find someone to talk to, find that person that can encourage you, because it's just the universe telling you what the next chapter is.
Right.
Just say yes.
Yes.
Say
well,
yes.
I hate to say goodbye, because if you can see, all of you listening, that Sue is just an inspirational woman who I miss. I was so happy.
I miss you too.
Yeah, actually, to get her on for this interview, to see her, I almost didn't record it so we could just keep chatting, but we both hope that you walk away with some really great information on ramping down, ramping up, using your intuition. If you're still mothering children, whether they're older or younger, and you're in business, understand that, you know, you can do it all. You got to sometimes, you know,
absolutely,
have conversations. But we're wishing you a happy thought for today. And if you need anything else about retirement, financial planning, CPAs, check out Women Ties, because we have a directory of a lot of really wonderful women that would be happy to talk to you.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure, Tracy. You look beautiful as always. I miss everybody out there who may see this and have fond memories of our events that we did together. You able to do your beautiful flowers anymore, Tracy, at your events? Or?
Yeah, I still do them. We're going to do 2 live events in June. So
wonderful.
I'll be able to do that again. But
get out to her events. There's some of the most powerful connections and information that you'll ever get. And the flowers, just grab them and take them home and think of me.
I have many pictures of Susan and I at the end of events with her with flowers.
Yeah, so, fresh flowers with me. I love them.
Yes, I know.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll be back in another week or so with another event, with another interview. Sorry about that. Talking about events, but we'll have another interview. So until next time, remember to buy from women first and foremost. Bye.
Thank you.